Welcome to 40 Below Zero, an international podcast about life with invisible illnesses, hosted by two guys living with multiple sclerosis. Coming to you from the Keystone State of Pennsylvania, I'm your co-host Nix, and with me on this ride is Terry, a Londoner who calls Ontario home. We're so happy you're here with us as we continue to try and normalize a life that is anything but. So let's get into it. Welcome back, Warriors. What's up? We're here another episode. Terry, good to see you again.
Good to see you too, man. I'm good. How are you?
Good. Any falls this week we should know about?
No.
Okay,
No
that's
falls.
good. That's really good to hear. You had told me before we get started, your pass is in. So now you're able to ride the rails at whenever you want.
It's
right?
not in yet. I got it signed. Yeah. So
Okay,
it'll be happening soon.
very good. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Well,
Thank you.
everyone, let's welcome back to the show, good friend of ours and dare I say, favorite member of the cast, Push. I don't know, is that being too bold? Brian, good to see you again. Welcome back.
Good to see you, boys. Obviously, I look forward to talking to you guys every time.
Good. And
Awesome.
not to downplay the other members, just
No, everybody's a fan. Everybody's a fan favorite. You just got to find out which fan.
Before we start, what's up with the hat, man? When do I get a hat?
What did you watch seasons 1 and 2 of Push?
Yo, I haven't. We're not gonna say it on. Yeah, bro. I did. Now, I had it sitting, running in the kitchen. Anyway,
you took your advice.
but I heard it. I was listening.
I heard it.
And
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not
I don't
afraid
know.
to admit.
Maybe tell you what, you get us season 3 on CBC. I'll send you a hat.
There you go. And I'm not afraid to admit I did in fact watch all 2 seasons. I did have them on the background, so I did my part, and I got you some
Nice.
views.
Nice, thanks, boys.
So
That's
very
cool.
well
I didn't know
welcome.
that you were able to watch it. I didn't even ask you about that.
Yes,
Cool.
there's ways.
There, yeah. Yeah, I was waiting for that. Yeah, there's ways. There's ways. We don't need to get into those details right now, but there are ways.
The internet's a big place.
It's a very big place, yeah.
Please do tell.
Maybe not. Oh, that's it. Well, Brian, we brought you. You wanted to come back to talk about actually some pretty serious issues today. We were talking about we wanted to talk about self-care and advocacy and how big a part they play in your lives, especially if you neglect both of them. So, and as you know, Terry and I are both advocates for our cause, as it were. So let's start with your take on self-care.
Yeah, I mean, anybody who knows me knows that I put everybody else first, which is never the right thing. But on the same token, some of us are just built that way. But it comes down to our healthcare systems and their dismissal when they think that you can't feel anything or you don't have proper motor skills. They kind of dismiss what you may be going through. And one of the craziest things to me is that I don't think they realize we all kind of become, I'm not going to say backyard doctors, but we become doctors of some sort, because you have to know your body as a person with a disability, because when something's not right, something's not right. And this story, this is an unbelievable story, and it actually, people got to see part of it actually in season 1 of Push. But I'll just jump right into it. Back in 2015, so I used to work construction. I was a foreman for a residential grading company. And believe it or not, actually, I rented out my spare room to my right hand. He was living with me. So we got up one morning. It was a Saturday. Actually, no, it was a Sunday morning. And I was in excruciating pain in my testicle. No rhyme, no reason why. Didn't sit on it. Wasn't a night of drinking or anything dumb. And could barely get dressed, could barely even pull my pants up to get into a vehicle to get to the hospital. So drove down to the hospital, come in, and I'm telling them, I'm in probably one of the worst pains I've ever been in. And the doctor comes in and says, your testicle's inflamed. And at this point, the testicle was probably just a little bit bigger than a golf ball, a little bit smaller than a tennis ball. So it's Sunday. We're at a local hospital, nothing major. So they first start by giving me, I think it was morphine to start. Cut a long story short, within the span of, I think, 3 hours, I went through 4 separate pain meds and nothing was working.
Whoa.
And I'm telling them, I'm like, this is pain. So they're like, well, in order to do some further research, we're going to have to transfer you to the main hospital in Edmonton. So we're going to transfer you by ambulance to the Royal Alec Hospital. By that point, my family had met me at the hospital. So then we get in the ambulance, and I'm telling you, like any male knows, just grab onto one of those things and give it a squeeze. It hurts, So I'm in absolute pain. None of the meds they've given me have worked up to this point. So the ambulance driver's like, tell you what, we're going to give you some laughing gas. No problem. So the distance from hospital to hospital, I think, is a total of 28 kilometers. It might be a little bit further than that. Don't quote me, but by the time they got me to the Royal Alec, I basically drained a bottle of laughing gas, and I still was not laughing. When they got me out, I was a little loopy, but also like in pain. And my mom's like, what's up with our son? And the guy's like, he's basically had a tank of laughing gas, and this man is still like in pain.
Were you in pain where it was like screaming pain, or were you just not comfortable at all?
No, screaming. Like, yeah, like the pain was enough that most people, I would assume, would be at the top of their lungs. I mean, I had tears in my eyes. I had the handrails on the side of the bed. I had bent one from flexing in because I was in so much pain. And you got to remember, when I got paralyzed, I flipped a trike at 65 kilometers an hour that landed on top. I was conscious through that whole experience. So when you talk about pain, it's not a guy who's never felt pain before. I literally was conscious while my back was broke, not breathing, blah 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 blah. So you just it was pain. So they get me to this hospital, and they started giving me liquid antibiotics, and they're like, well, there's definitely something going on. We're going to give you some liquid antibiotics and see what's happening. Within 24 hours, the testicle was bigger than the size of a baseball, but actually the size of a softball. And at that point, it had been, 48 hours from start. And I'm like, get this thing out of me. And they're like, well, no, let's just wait. The antibiotics will kick in and yada, 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 and whatever. And the following day, so now it would have been 48 hours of liquid antibiotics. The testicle was the size of a cantaloupe. And I'm screaming. I'm like, get this thing out of me. Like, I don't give a shit about it anymore. I don't care. Just get it.
What's going on?
Yeah. So this, trust me, this is going to blow your mind. So they removed the testicle, and like the whole time I'm begging for drugs, right? And at this point, doctors, nurses, they all think I'm a junkie because they can't give me drugs quick enough. And I'm like, hit me again. And they're like, dude, like, you need to slow down. And I'm like, I'm telling you, like, you guys aren't, nothing's working. So I go in for surgery. I get up, I wake up in recovery, fit as a fiddle. No pain. All the pain is gone. I sit straight up. I'm like, fuck yeah. To the point where I call Pizza 73 and order a pizza to the Emerge. You know, I go grab the pizza, like get in my chair, wheel to Emerge to meet the guy to grab my pizza. I come back. The nurse is like, what the hell are you doing? And I'm like, getting pizza. And she's like, you just had surgery. I'm like, yeah. And I feel great. And she's like, you shouldn't be eating pizza right now. You're going to throw up. And I'm like 3 slices in. And I'm like, you don't even know what you're talking about. And she's like, well, do you want your pain meds? And I'm like, no, I don't want my meds. I'm like, I told you idiots. I was in pain. I'm not in pain. I don't want anything. She's like, you don't want nothing. I'm like, no. She walks out of my room. Well, anybody who knows anything about surgeries, the worst thing you can do right after surgery is eat.
Yep.
So I threw up my guts. She waited around the corner to hear it and then poked her head in to go, I told you so. But so of course, you know, the surgery was done. I think it was done late at night or whatever. So the next morning the doctor comes in and he's like, I understand you're feeling a lot better. I'm like, yeah, I'm feeling great. I'm like, what the hell? And he goes, well, to be totally honest with you, there really wasn't much wrong with the actual testicle. And I'm like, excuse me? And he goes, it was definitely inflamed. But we can't tell you as to why. We don't know that, but the testicle actually had looked pretty healthy. And I'm like, okay, so what caused the problem? He's like, we honestly don't know.
That's comforting.
And I'm like, okay, well, I said that sucks, but on the same token, I don't care because I'm not in pain. So that's all I care about. So they released me. You know, I spent 2 days, I think, at home, and then I was right back to work. And that's just who I am, and whatever, everything was fine. So I don't, timelines kind of get a little screwy, just, you know, I'm getting old. But about 6 months, maybe a little longer than 6 months goes by. And I noticed that in my pubic line, there's like this pocket, and it feels like there's fluid in it. So I go back into urology and I'm like, see the same doctor. And I'm like, hey, doc, like something's not right here. I'm like, you know, there's this pocket of what feels like fluid. Like I feel like if I were to cut it open, I would drain whatever's in here. Oh, no. That's from surgery. And I'm like, I really don't think it is, doc. Like I'm telling you, something's not right in this area. So he pushes a little bit. He says, no, that's just swelling. He says, eventually over time, it'll go down. So, okay, what do I do? So I go on my merry way. It's been over a year. It's still there. Go back to him and I'm like, you know, there's this pocket and I'm telling you, it's getting worse. And honestly, it's starting to get uncomfortable. Oh, it's just part of it. It's blah, 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 blah. It was an excuse after an excuse. And what do you do? You know, these are professionals. Yeah. You can only argue so much. So I go home and all of a sudden, kind of like this pimple forms. And I'm like, oh yeah, what's that about? So I don't fuck with it. A couple days goes by and pimple gets a little bigger. And I'm like, well, this thing's got to pop. Like I gotta get rid of this. So I pop it, and sure enough, all of this fluid comes out of me. And guess what drains? The pocket.
Yeah.
Ta-da. So it all drains, and I'm like, well, here the whole time I've been bitching about it, they didn't do dick. this pimple forms, it pops, it drains. Going back to them is going to be absolutely pointless because all I'm going to do is go, I told you so. And all they're going to say is weird and tell me to go. So I'm like, so I kind of let it go. Well, every 3 to 6 months, and it literally was exactly every 3 to 6 months, I'd get an infection. I'd end up in hospital. They would say, oh, you've got a bladder infection. Here's some liquid. Here's some antibiotics. Blah 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 blah. Now this kept going on and on and on and on. So this is 2000. You know, by the time this thing had burst, it was probably 16, 17. Every 3 to 6 months, from 17 through to 19, this was going on, and every time I'm in there, like it's getting worse. Every time it feels worse. Every time I'm telling them like this ain't right. We need to get this fixed. Yada yada yada, and it keeps draining out of this same spot, like where that pimple was. It would seal up, and then all of a sudden it would come back, and then it would sometimes it'd be worse. Sometimes it wouldn't be as bad, but it'd still be infection, and it would drain. And so 2020, summer of 2020, I'm bitching and I'm like, listen, you know, like I've been in hospital now, I don't know how many times over the same issue. Something's not right. Like, you guys need to figure it out. And I'm tired of leaking fluid into my underwear. Like, this isn't attractive for a male, never mind attractive for anybody for that matter.
Right.
So they go in and do a check, and they do an MRI and a bunch of x-rays, and the doctor comes back to me, the same urologist. Out of professionalism, we're not going to use his name, but we're going to call him Dr. Fuckhead.
I know a Dr. Fuckhead too. That's a coincidence.
Weird, hey? Wonder how that happens. So Dr. Fuckhead comes to me and he says, oh, well, we found a track in your pelvis. And I'm like, a track? And he says, yeah, it's kind of like a little void inside your pelvis. And I said, okay. He goes, it's really nothing major. He says, oh God, can you still see me?
Yes, I saw a glitch happen, but you're there.
Sorry.
It's okay. You want to fix it for you, you can do it.
So anyways, he says to me, says, yeah, it's a minor track. He says, we're going to go in. We're going to clean it up, sew you up. We'll have to put a drain in you for a few days, you know, but everything will be fine. Very, very minor surgery, in and out, blah, 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 blah. So I say, okay, fair enough. Well, the day before the surgery, Dr. Fuckhead calls and says, hey, one of my colleagues is going to do the surgery. I said, oh yeah? So why is that? Well, I'm double booked and blah, 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 blah. I said, okay, whatever. I don't, you know, as long as somebody's fixing it, that's all that matters. So December 10th of 2020. Now, if you remember dates, December of 2020, we are in the pandemic. You couldn't have been in the thick of the pandemic, right? So This is when we're going to do this surgery. So now people can make fun of me at 46 years old. I really don't give a shit. I'm a mama's boy. My mom is my heart and my soul. That woman has been beside me through every medical procedure that has ever been done in my life. So I go into the surgery. My mom's freaking out because she can't be there. And I'm like, Mom, you know, they told me this is going to be nothing. You know, all I need you here for is to drive me home afterwards, blah, 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 blah. So I go in, sure enough, you know, we're talking hour surgery, maybe hour and 10 minutes. And I wake up and I'm sewn in my groin and there's no drain. And I'm like, okay, well, that's a little fucked up. So this doctor, we'll call him Dr. Numbnuts. He comes in and I'm like, what's going on? And he goes, nothing. He's like, everything went really well. And I said, okay. I said, I'm a little concerned because I was told there was going to be a drain and now there's not. And he goes, oh, there was no need for it. He says, you know, we found the track. It was very minor. We sewed you up, cleaned you up. Everything's really good. We're gonna give you some antibiotics. You know, you're gonna be fine. You can go home. Yada yada yada. So, you know, I think as most human people, human natured people would do, on one side you'd be, you know, well, what the fuck? Where's this drain? But on the other side, you're like, well, solid. I don't have a drain.
Right.
Fucking sweet.
Right.
You know. So they sent me home. So that was on December 10th of 2020. So 2 days goes by and I'm uncomfortable and I'm not doing well. And again, we're in the middle of the pandemic. So, you know, my mother is coming up to help me out and do whatever. And on the third day, my mom's like, B, you know, like I really think you need to get up and get into the shower. And I'm like, Mom, like I can barely sit. Like something's not right. And she's like, well, I think it's because you're laying around so much. Like you really need to get up. We need to get you sitting up. You know, you gotta start moving. You know, what have you been eating? And blah blah. You know, typical mother shit.
Yeah.
And I cried from the second I sat at a 90-degree to the shower, out of the shower. I cried. I cried the whole time. I was in so much pain. And my mom's like, this doesn't make any sense, B. She's like, you know, they said they did this, yada, yada, yada. And I'm like, Mom, something's not right. So keep taking the antibiotics, day 5, and now it's bad. And like the scar tissue, the scar line is inflamed. It doesn't look good. I'm telling my mom, I'm like, Mom, like something, I'm telling you, I can't move without crying. Whatever. So this is on a Friday. So that Friday, we call my GP. Now we're gonna call my GP Dr. God because I love my GP. He is an amazing man. He listens to me. He doesn't dismiss me.
Well, that's rare.
So I'm like, Doc, like something's not right, man. Like I'm in excruciating pain. I'm telling you, this scar does not look healthy. And he says to me, he says, okay, he says, you know, if you need to go to the hospital, go. He's like, you know, obviously, get your ass to the hospital. He says, but you do have a follow-up with the surgeon on Monday. So he's like, you know, under the circumstances, and again, they're going off pandemic bullshit. He's like, under the circumstances, you know, if you can avoid going to the hospital, I would try. Obviously, if your health is concerned, go. But if you can hold out till Monday, and we'll get it figured out. So we get off the phone and my mom's like, what do you want to do? And I'm like, you know what? I said, I'm just going to lay here. I'm going to take my meds. I said, come up tomorrow. You know, we'll try to tough it out. So my mom left my condo at 6:00 that night. And so I'm lying in bed and all of a sudden I can smell this foul smell. And I'm like, all I could think of at that moment was I shit myself. And so, you know, you do the reach around and there's nothing there. And I'm like, what the fuck? So I don't think too much of it. I kind of lay there for another couple minutes and I can smell this smell, and this smell is foul. Like I've never smelled anything like this in my whole entire life. Reach around again, I can't feel anything. And just as I'm pulling my hand out, I feel this slime closer to my groin. I'm like, what the fuck is that? So I get myself into a seated position because I can't see properly. I look down and I've exploded gangrene out of my groin.
Whoa.
and I am sitting in literally a liter of green, foul gangrene.
Ooh.
I call 911, and the woman gets on the phone, and I'm like, I just exploded gangrene out of a surgical site. I'm laying in it. I'm in my bed. I'm a paraplegic. I'm this, I'm that, I'm this, I'm that, I'm this. And this woman's like almost not even believing what I'm telling her. But at the same token, she can hear the panic and the tears and the sheer fear in my voice. And she's like, Mr. McPherson, I have an ambulance on its way. It'll be there in 30 seconds. Stay on the line. And I'm like, I can't. Like, I need to get a hold of my family. I need my family to know what's happening right now. I'm like, she's like, well, I'll call you back in 15 seconds. So I hang up, I call my mom. I'm like, I explained to her real quickly what's going on. Ambulance is on his way. But I'm forgetting that we're in the height of COVID. So it don't fucking matter calling my mom. My mom ain't coming. She's not allowed to come to no hospital. And so I get off the phone, and the ambulance, the paramedics get back on the phone, and she's like, Mr. McPherson, you should be starting to hear sirens. And sure enough, you can hear the sirens in the background or whatever. So she stays on the phone with me. They get up, they come in through the door. I'm like, yeah, they're here. She's like, okay, I'm gonna let you go. So the two paramedics come into my room. The first paramedic, I don't know whether the mask was tight for him. I don't know, but he didn't notice a damn thing. He walked straight into the room. Hey, bud, how's it going? And started like, moving things around so that they could set up their equipment. The second paramedic walks into my room. You could see him. It hit him like the waft. The smell hit him like a ton of bricks, and then this paramedic like literally stumbled, whoa, holy hell! And he's like, whoa, what's going on? And I'm like, here's the situation. And he goes, well, can I take a look? And I said, by all means. And he walks over. He pulls my bed sheet back, and he looked down, and before I could say another word, the two of them wrapped me in the sheet, lifted me up out of the sheet straight into the fucking stretcher, and there was no strapping, there was no fuck all, and we were out of here. They got me into that ambulance. Now I'm going to tell you, in my life, I've probably had over 12 ambulance rides. Again, crazy Brian does stupid shit. Let's move past that. But I have never in my life heard a rev limiter hit in an ambulance. Never. I have never heard those guys hit a rev limiter. Wow. I heard that rev limiter on every fucking gear on the way to hospital. Every single gear that ambulance hit, it was hitting its rev limiter.
The rev limiter sounds like
yeah, like like he's got it pinned to the floor. So, and I know this city really well. You could take me out of my home, blindfold me, and go for a ride, and I could probably tell you exactly where we're at. And I bet you $100 if I were to guess, if we weren't doing 140 down Yellowhead, I would have been impressed that night. Like, they were hauling ass to the point where a couple corners, I thought for sure I was coming off that stretcher. There was no fucking around with these guys, man. We were on it. So they get me to the hospital, and I don't even remember triage. I don't remember. If I was there 30 minutes, I would have been impressed. And the next time, if it was 35 minutes, I was in an operating room, and they were prepping. And I remember the doctor coming over and being like, "Listen, I can't give you answers until we get in there. Something's desperately wrong. but you're in good hands. We got you. And I'm like, just tell my family I love them. And yeah. And so they go in for surgery. So I wake up the next morning and I'm lying in this bed and I'm wearing this weird suit, man. And I'm telling you, it was the weirdest looking suit. There's hoses coming in and out of it. And I'm coming to and I'm looking and I'm like, what the hell? And there's this nurse that's been sitting there this whole time waiting me to come to. And she's like, don't move, don't touch anything. I'm gonna go get the doctor. We're gonna explain to you what's going on. And I'm like, okay. So the doctor comes into my room and we're still with Dr. Numbnuts.
Again?
And he says to me, I don't want you to freak. I don't want you to panic, but you're wide open right now. And I'm like, excuse me? And he says, listen, when we cut you open, the infection was tremendous. It was so bad that we've cut out as much as we could, but we're afraid that if we start closing you, we're still going to be closing infection in. So right now, you're wide open. There's gauze in your groin. You've got these liquid antibiotics. You don't get stronger than what we're giving you, blah, 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 blah. Says we're going to have to go back in every 24 to 36 hours and we're going to have to start sewing you up. And he says, we're not going to be able to do it all in one. It's going to take us multiple surgeries to fix it, to get you closed, to ensure that this infection is out of you. He says that this infection is the worst I've seen in my career. And we're just trying to make sure you're safe. And I mean, what do you do? What do you say? What do you so my initial thought is, okay, well, how? Well, why is there this massive infection? I don't know. And I'm like, listen, you guys, I'm getting a little tired of the I don't fucking knows. You all drive Porsches and fucking nice BMWs. I've seen them in the parking lot. And you're fucking telling me you don't know what the fuck's wrong with me? This is your job. This is what you are, a specialist in urology. And you're telling me you don't know what the fuck's going on in my groin. But meanwhile, I'm cut wide open. Mr. McPherson, we're doing everything we can. And again, you got to remember, this is during a pandemic as well. So I'm not going to dismiss things, but on the same token, I'm realist. I can give credit that, these poor bastards have probably been working 5 days straight, no sleep. They've watched more people die than they ever have in their whole fucking career. In the hospital, when I went for surgery, there was one area that was taped off with poly and all this red tape. It's literally where they're storing bodies. You like, it was the most eerie time to be in a hospital.
Yeah.
So, I'm on the phone with my parents and I'm telling them what's going on. My mom's losing her ever living fucking mind.
Sure.
I go in for the next surgery and somehow, some way, Dr. Jesus comes into play, and I don't even know how it came to be. I'm gonna assume it was Dr. Numbnuts and Dr. fucking Fuckhead were in surgeries, so they called on the third. I really don't know how it was that Dr. Jesus came into play, but they do the second surgery. Come out of recovery. I'm coming in and out of recovery when Dr. Jesus says, I found the problem. I said, okay. So back in 2015, the reason my testicle was swelling, the reason this started was because at some point in 2015, a catheter from doing in and out catheterization punctured my urethra and had left the hole. And
Wow.
urine was seeping through the hole into internally. And that's what was causing
Wow.
all my problems.
Wow. Holy moly.
So I'm like, well, what the fuck? So he says to me, he says, right now, our focus is getting you close. Oh, and sorry, just before we get a little further, I did the stupidest thing, and this goes out to all of our viewers, listeners. I'm going to tell you from experience, don't ever fucking look. I don't care how tough you think you are. I don't care how educationally think it's going to be. But when they changed the gauze after the very, very first one, after the infection, when they changed that gauze, I made the terrible mistake of looking down. And when your groin is 4.5 inches off your body and you can see into your pelvis, it's probably something that has scarred me for life. I've probably got, a little PTSD from it, but it is scary. It is not there are dreams sometimes at night that just hit you in a way that just really suck. But anywho, so he goes in after surgery 2, surgery 3, they're able to seal it up. And now the decision is that their hope is that by having a Foley catheter in, that maybe the urethra will heal on its own. So this is all, so again, you go back to timelines, it was I think it was actually 7 days after the first. So December 17th would have been when I went in. Surgeries every 2 to 3 days. I'm literally recovering Christmas Day in hospital during COVID. I mean, it couldn't have been probably the shittiest times of my life. God bless the Royal Alexandrian nurses and staff. If anybody from that hospital is watching and remembers who I am, I love you very much. You were all came in and made my Christmas that year a Christmas I'll never forget. You took care of me. You brought me back to health. My 3 main nurses, I bought each of them. I had my mom buy me angels for the tops of Christmas trees, and I met her in the parking lot so I could grab them and gave them to my nurses just to thank them for everything they had done for me throughout that time. About a month went by. They had released me, said I could go home. Had this Foley in. A month went by, and I'm still leaking out of one of the incisions. And we'll go back in, and I'm telling the doc, I'm like, listen, this ain't working. I'm still leaking, and it's still leaking out of this incision. We're just going to end up going back. And he says, there's only one other option I can think of. And he says, I want to install a suprapubic catheter into you. So for the viewers who don't know, a suprapubic catheter, it's a catheter that literally comes out of your pelvic line, your pubic line. It's direct into your bladder. It doesn't have anything to do with your male or female function anatomy. It's literally a tube out of a spot that's not supposed to come out, but it allows no urine to pass by or go through your urethra or whatever the case. And I'm going to tell you, it's not a very comfortable. They do it while you're awake. They take this big long rod and jam it through your groin into your bladder. It's fucking painful. Anyways, so they install this suprapubic catheter, and he says, the hope is now your urethra will definitely be able to heal because there's nothing in there. There's nothing whatever. And I need a drink because this next part gets a little emotional. 1 minute.
Totally fine. Take your time. Terry had to step out too, so he'll be right back.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay.
Yeah, so they installed this super catheter, and I mean, as a male, you can only imagine what it is like to. I mean, I had a girlfriend at the time, you know, and you're trying to be intimate while you have this tube coming out of your body that's not supposed to be there, that's strapped to a leg bag, and you know, it's just
Yeah.
it's another part of being disabled that you just weren't expecting, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, so a few months go by, and I'm still leaking and draining out of the wrong areas, and so I meet Dr. Jesus again, and I'm like, listen, I don't know what to tell you, bud, but we're at a stalemate. You know, I'm still leaking. It's foul. It's my underwear's soaked throughout a day. You know, and I'm working. Like just so everybody's aware, this isn't. I'm still at home recovering. I'm still working for a construction company. While all this is going on, you know, I had from December 10th to January 17th, I was off, and then I was right back to work February 1st. Because as we all know, bills don't stop just because our health stops. So,
Nope.
So Dr. Jesus says to me, you know, at this point, I don't think we have too many more options other than full reconstructive surgery. But we really don't know when that's going to happen. We'll do this, do that, do whatever. So now we're filming. We're in push. We're CBC is around me, and we're doing all this filming now. I don't need to get into detail with CBC about certain things. You know, my health is my health. I've got certain things going on, and you know, every once in a while I'm not feeling well, so you know, you just kind of I'm taking a day or whatever. But the one morning, we have a photo shoot that we're doing for Goodwill, and actually it was Victoria who was doing the shoot, but I'm the one who drives, not her. So you know, we get up in the morning, and I'm telling Victoria like something's not right. I'm not feeling good, and I'm like, there feels like there's this this fluid inside my groin. And I'm like, you know, something's not right.
Wow.
And so I'm kind of doing checks or whatever, and I roll over, and it appears to be this little pinhole in my butt. And I'm like, well, what the fuck is this? And I go to push, and all of a sudden I just start bleeding. And I mean bleeding. Like we're going through gauze every 2 minutes, 2 to 5 minutes. It's just gauze covered in blood. So again, get on the phone, call 911. You know, I'm bleeding, blah 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 blah. Now, you know, I wasn't trying to be. I guess I should have watched my terminology. I told them, I'm like, when I got on the phone, she's like, "What's your emergency?" I'm like, "Well, I'm kind of bleeding out." And she's like, "What do you mean you're bleeding out?" And I'm like, "Well, it's got this pinhole. I'm a paraplegic. There's blood coming out of it. We can't seem to stop the bleeding." When you say bleeding out to a paramedic or to, you know,
Yeah.
they're thinking like your jugular vein and shit's flying, you know.
Yeah.
That ambulance hauled ass. I could hear that thing from miles away coming. That siren was on it. And of course, we had called CBC because we were supposed to be at this photo shoot. And I'm like, you know, I got an ambulance. They're on their way. We don't know what's wrong. I'm bleeding, blah, 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 blah. Well, CBC made it in record time as well. So
I'm sure.
all of that footage is for real. You
Yep.
know, not that anything on it was not real. A push is real. The whole show's real. But yeah, they showed up, and they're like, "Can we record this?" And I'm like, "Absolutely. This is what this is what push is all about, is about educating the people as to the shit we go through. And yeah, mine might be an extraordinary circumstance, but it doesn't matter. It's still a circumstance that wouldn't be felt by an able-bodied, human being. So anyway, so they give me to the hospital, and there was, and again, if you watch the show, that there's some turmoil going on between me and Victoria. So there's some misunderstanding as to what's going on and what it could be, and this and that, whatever. I'm not going to get into that. I'm not going to relive old fucking war wounds, but the long of it is that it was an abscess, and it was from this fucking groin again. And so I get out, and ironically, within 2 weeks, I get a letter stating, or I get a phone call from Dr. Jesus saying, we're going to do a full reconstructive surgery. And I'm like, okay, define to me what this reconstructive surgery is about. And he's like, well, right now there's 3 different tracks in your pelvis. There's 3 different voids in your pelvis. He says, so we got to go in. We're going to have to fix these tracks. But he says, we're also going to repair the urethra. Even if you never use it again, it's good to get it repaired and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, when is this transpiring? And he says, well, this is going to happen on December 4th. Now, December at this point is like 3 months away, 4 months away. And I'm like, okay, fair enough. A week later, it got bumped to November 4th.
Okay.
And I'm like, what's going on? Well, we just feel we need to get in here and get this done. So I'm not an advocate of it. I don't right now in our world, it's being offered to people with disabilities and to people in life in general. It's being offered pretty almost as candy. It's actually easier to make this one decision than it is to get anything else done. But before I get into it, you need to understand, like, been in a wheelchair 29 years. I've had 3 massive pressure sore surgeries when I was young, reconstructive. I've had 4 tendon surgeries. I've had numerous broken bones, split toes. I've been through a lot in my life, and there's nothing I haven't overcome. At this point of my life, they had performed over 4 surgeries at this point and still had not got it right. I had been suffering since 2015. And for the viewers that do know me and the viewers that don't, I worked really hard my whole life to become something. Whether I got inducted to the Hall of Fame for basketball, or played 3 years for Team Canada Development Hockey, or became Canada's first bobsled pilot, or ran heavy equipment, or became an auto body specialist. I did things that not a lot of people with disabilities would even attempt to do. And I was proud of it. I was proud of everything I'd ever done in my life. And I was proud of my parents. My family has always been proud, saying that, nothing ever stopped Brian, slowed Brian down. After 4 surgeries, after the gangrene incident and the damn near dying in a hospital alone, it takes a toll on you. And unfortunately, my faith in the doctors and our healthcare system was no longer. And I ended up calling my mom and dad up to Victoria's condo because we were together at the time. And they sat down, and I had my parents in under 2 hours agreed to medical assisted suicide. You know, I know that this comment, and I know that this topic is probably going to bring up a lot of different topics, different anger, different conversations, but I couldn't love two people more than I love my mom and dad. You know, my parents have been beside me through it all. And the decision that I put upon them that day ripped both their hearts out. I think the three of us, especially, and Victoria as well, I think we all died a little bit that day. When I started the conversation, I asked if my family was proud of me. It wasn't for validation. It was so that they knew when I asked the next question that I would use the first question against them. When I asked them, you know, are you proud of me? And they said, well, of course we're proud of you. Look at all the accomplishments you've done. I said, okay. I said, well, I need you to sign off on this, and I need you to be proud of the decision you're making as well. And when I put it down in front of them, I mean, both my parents broke down, and, you know, obviously the first question is why, and all I could tell my mom and dad at that point was that, you know, since 2015 we've been suffering, and this gangrene situation almost took my life, whether we liked it or not. I may appear to be healthy, but I'm not. And my body is shutting down right now. And I don't have any faith in the doctors fixing it. And I said, you know, I've lived a great life. I've done it all. I'm happy. I'm happy. I'm like, as I'm sitting in front of you with this burden, with this conversation, I'm actually one of the happiest men alive. And because I've done so much, I've had good support. I've had my family, my friends. I've been a part of a international show that we're showing people this and that. Like, what more could I actually want in my life? You know, I'm 46, 45. I don't plan on having any kids. You know, I've been the great Uncle B my whole life. You know, it's been an honor. I'm like, you know, I want to go on my own terms, and I am not having my family watch me deteriorate and suffer in debt. I will not. I refuse. You know, we tasted that in December of 20 when the only way you could see me deteriorate, the only way you could watch me dying was through a cell phone camera. And I'm not doing it. And if I'm going to go, I'm going to go on my own terms. And I'm like, you know, just so we're honest about this, you're not signing this and I'm getting into the car, driving to the hospital, and that's the end of it. I'm giving the doctors this one last chance. I'm going in, I'm going to give them this opportunity to do this reconstructive surgery. But you got to understand, every surgery you're taking away more skin, you're taking out more vital internals. Your scar tissue isn't going to bind properly. It's not going to heal properly, and you know, it's a vicious circle. You're talking about the sixth fucking surgery in the exact same spot. You know, your likelihood of success is not as great as it would comes first surgery. And yeah, and I told my parents they had to make a decision before they left, because I knew if I'd given my family too much time, the answer was going to be no. You know, who's ever going to want to agree to say goodbye to a loved one like that? And one of the terriblest things I've ever had to ask of my mom and dad in my whole entire life, and of my sister. And you know, my sister, my mom, my dad all said the same thing, that, you know, this is not what we want. We have faith that this will go better, but we respect why you're asking this of us. If this is 100% what you want, we'll support it. And that day, my mom and dad, my family agreed to sign off on medical assisted suicide. And you know, you never will understand that pain until you look into your own family's eyes and watch them as they sign that paper, you know, and they make that decision. I don't think anybody in this world understands how much suffering a loved one goes through until you get to look into their eyes and see it. And it's literally as if I had committed suicide already. And I was watching them grieve afterwards. And anyways, it was tough. So November 4th, we went in. What was supposed to be a 3-hour surgery ended up being over 4.5, 5 hours. There was more internal damage than what it was originally thought to be. So much so they couldn't even fix part of it. The one part, I still have a very, very small track inside that they couldn't get to. And when I say they couldn't get to it, Dr. Jesus, God bless his soul, he made a decision where he could have fixed it, but it would have costed me my sexual functionality. And he, while in surgery, had to make a decision on, if I don't close this, is this going to be long-term catastrophic damage? Or do I end this man's sexual function and seal it? Blah, 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 blah. So when I came to, luckily my mother was there, but when I came to, he said, you know, we've closed almost everything up. You know, I'm pretty confident in it. And I said, what do you mean almost? Like, we, you know, this was supposed to be one and done, son. And he said, you know, I could have closed you completely, but you would have lost sexual function. And I didn't want to do that to you. He says, you know, I'm pretty confident that in the manner I fixed everything, it will heal and it will close on its own now that there's no more fluid adding to it, and bacteria and infection. Cleaned everything out. It should technically slowly seal on its own. It might not, but at the end of the day, everything is fixed to the best of my ability. And if we have to go back, this will be the option. Lose your sexual function, blah, 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 blah. So yeah, it's been November of 2022. 21, 22. What are we, 24, 23?
It's okay, 24.
Yeah,
This
pressure
this was
point.
done by Dr. Jesus, right?
Yeah, and
And you
Dr.
believe him?
Jesus
I know
solved
he's
it. I haven't I still have a suprapubic catheter, and I'm going to be honest to my fellow disabled catheter users. Um, it takes a little bit to get over it, but once you do, I honestly think that they should be giving every person with a disability a suprapubic catheter. I've heard too many horror stories now. I do a lot of public speaking. I've done a lot of hospital visits with males where a lot of them are suffering from punctured urethras, from in and out catheterization, something going wrong. This way, you don't have to worry about it. The catheter gets changed once a month. Just for safety reasons, I actually still go into the clinic and have a nurse change it. Ironically, I just did an emergency change not too long ago because mine was plugged. Wasn't a big deal, but I just like the security of knowing it was done correctly. But all the surgery, everything that I went through has healed, and I haven't leaked. I haven't had any problems since. And you know, Dr. Jesus, he's one of those guys where he doesn't. He's probably the smartest man on earth, but he's a very awkward socially awkward man. And when we were on the second, so you know, a few months after I go in, they stick a camera up your penis and take a look at the urethra and do all this bullshit. Then a year later, they do it again, and on the year one, because I'm not hugging you after a few months, bud. Like, I'm sorry, I don't trust you. And a year went by, and on the year end, the year of the surgery, I hugged him, and it was funny because we were in this room, and there was all these nurses, and Dr. Jesus is a very, you know, don't touch him, don't, you know, he's a very smart man or whatever, and he made the mistake of walking up close enough that I could sit up, and I fucking grabbed him, and I started crying, and I just fucking held on to this man. And then he, you know, he's a, you know, he's a not a tiny guy, but he's a, you know, a pretty small or little Asian dude, and just fucking squeezed him so hard and cried as I held him, and just I just remember saying thank you so much, you saved my life. And I don't know if he knows. I don't know if he truly believes. Anytime when I go into the clinic and I see any of the nurses, I always talk about Dr. Jesus, and I always say that man saved my life. You know, that man saved my life. And I keep praying that every time I go into the hospital, I get to see Dr. Fuckhead, just so that at least I know I'm the one that killed him, and they can arrest me and take me to jail, and I don't give a fuck about it. I will live my life. As long as that man never touches another fucking human being for the rest of my life, I would be happy. You know, I did try to go legally. I was going to sue everybody for everything I'd been put through, due to the fact that I trusted what I was being told, and so many years had gone by. You only have a certain period of time that you can go after a doctor for malpractice. That window was gone, and now it's opportunities like right now that I'm utilizing instead, where rather than going after it financially or whatever, I'm just trying to teach people that you know your own body, you know, and these doctors, they're amazing people, most of them. You know, they're there to fix the problem. That's it. They're not, you know, they might know the anatomy inside and out. They're not taught bedside manners. They're not taught to have emotions. They're literally taught that if you're cut open bleeding or this is going on, this is what most likely the problem is, and this is how it's going to get fixed. They don't care about anything outside of that. And when you go into the hospital as a paraplegic, quadriplegic, MS, CP, the list goes on and on. When you go in with anything outside of being a normal human, you have to fight for your right. You have to fight for your health. And you need to be adamant with these doctors that no, listen, something is not fucking right. And I'm pissed, like I wish I would have raised more hell about that pocket in my pelvis. I wish, even if you go further back to the testicle, like, okay, you guys need to figure it out. I don't give a shit why it's out. It's out. I get it, but you have to figure out why. It's not an anomaly. It didn't just a an evil fairy didn't fly through the head of my penis and fucking jab it with a goddamn pitchfork and like figure it the fuck out, you guys. And it's the same thing with anything mechanical. I mean, if you really want to go get down to the brass tacks, I mean, outside of the fact we're not able to unbolt and bolt new parts back on, the human body is not that much further different from an automobile. You got the heart, which is the engine block. You got, you got your fluids, your veins, you got your brake lines and your fuel lines and you can go through and it's kind of similar when a car breaks down. There, oh, I don't know what happened. Well, okay, maybe you don't, but something happened. Something obviously happened. We'll find the problem if it's that important to you. And my life is that fucking important to me. You guys should have figured it out. So it was one of the roughest times of my life. I'm not gonna lie. It was shitty. Victoria got to live the tail end of everything. And I don't think the show really ever showed how much I really appreciated and the things that Victoria put up with or went through when we were together. And don't ever trust a TV show. They don't capture everything properly. But Victoria and I have seen each other and talked a few times in the recent past, and I am forever grateful, and I'm forever grateful to all the people that are around my life: Bean Gill, Brittany Nunzik, Carla and Terry, my mom, my dad. All these people have sat beside me through all this hell and have just been nothing but support. But the main message is, don't ever give up fighting. Don't ever give up arguing. It's tiresome and it takes a lot of energy, and sometimes you do want to just give up. Nobody understands it more than I do. There's even times, even now, where giving up seems like an easier solution. It's just, it really isn't. There's more to it. There's more to life. And if you can just hold on and show a little more resilience and a little more fight and advocate for yourself and argue that no, this isn't right, something's wrong, eventually someone's going to listen. They're going to find it, make your life easier. And that being said, and I'm not, you can cut this segment out, you can do whatever you want with it, but to anybody that's ever been put in a situation or has had a family member that's made the decision to go with medical assisted suicide, I respect and understand your decision, your family's decision. I'm sorry that you ever had to get to a point in your life where you had to make that decision. But sometimes people have suffered enough, and you look at the way we treat our dogs, our cats. When our animals are suffering, we've done all we can. Quietly put them to bed. It's the most painless act that we can do to our animals, yet we will have our humans lay in beds for years in suffering and misery and anger, all these things. There's, I'm not saying that should be an answer to at any point, but if you've exhausted all avenues and you're still in that much pain and you're still in that much agony, if you've had to come to that decision, I support it and I understand it. If anybody's ever had to go through it, I'm always around to talk to anybody about it. I'm still here. I made that decision and I'm still here. And, that's living proof that you can overcome things. And thank God. Thank God I didn't make that decision. I'm still here to sit and bullshit with my boys. And I'm still here to piss off the world. But you come to a place in life where certain pieces need to be understood. So to anybody who's ever been there, I get it. And if there's anybody ever needs any support, wants support, please reach out to me. You can reach out to me on my Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok, through my two wonderful gentlemen that I get the honor of seeing once a month. Anyway, you need to reach out. I'd be more than willing to sit down and talk to anybody about it, about their struggles and what options they have. But just know that I respect anybody who's had to be put in that position, because I know what it's like.
And we'll put your information out there, man. For sure. Dude, I love you, man. Thank you so much for telling me your story, bro.
Wow.
I can't even tell you. People who know me know that I tried, man, but I'm inside. It's so hard to hear when you're like the incision and you had to look down inside. I'm like, oh, please don't be graphic. I'm
Yeah.
so glad you told the story, bro, because I know a lot of men out there are having issues, and I was having issues once, and I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know if it was because of my hernia surgery. I don't know, and I didn't tell anyone because it was embarrassing. I got through whatever I got through. Bro, for you to tell me your story, man, so much love for you, man.
Thanks,
Yeah.
buddy. I appreciate it. And
Mountains of respect.
I have no idea, bro.
yeah, it's a tough one. It's and again, like I don't ever want another male to ever have to go through it. And I know that somebody will, and I've already come across a couple gentlemen that have been put in a similar situation, and I just want it to be known. So the next time you're doing a catheter change and you feel a little resistance, take a breath, start over. If you're feeling discomfort, if you're sweating for something, there's so many tattletales, but just take care of yourself, because one day it could be something that is irreversible. And like I said, if I don't know if that rev limiter hadn't been hit, I don't know if I'd still be around. It's it was scary. It was scary.
I can only imagine.
Music to our ears.
Yeah. But thank
thanks
you, boy.
Thank you for coming back. Thanks for being so vulnerable and allowing us to experience that and to shed light on a lot of stuff that you didn't get to see on the show and get to know you better than I think the show would have ever shown us, even though it's a good show.
Yeah. And if people want to learn more,
I'm gonna watch
just
that
push
episode.
play.
Just push play. Hashtag just push play. I'm gonna watch that episode again, man, because I remember that episode vividly.
Yep.
And everyone was like, "Oh, was it a pressure sore?" And I was like, "I'm gonna talk to this guy about pressure sores." But now that you clear it up, I'm like, "Oh, it wasn't even a pressure sore."
Yeah, it had nothing to do with the pressure sore. And actually, whether CBC, medical staff, whether people want to admit to it or not, my honest belief, and this is terrible. I'm sure it's going to piss people off, but my honest belief is that because we were in the middle of filming a CBC docuseries with cameras, going into a hospital with me bitching about what the fuck is going on. I truly believe the healthcare system jumped in and was like, we probably should get this solved. It's being televised on national television right now.
Thanks,
you know, so if that is part of it, I mean, it's unfortunate that's what it took to get to where I am. But on the same token,
so
thank
thanks,
you.
CBC. No thanks to Dr. Numbnuts and
Yeah,
whatever
yeah,
the other one
Dr.
was.
Fuckhead and Dr.
Fuckhead.
Numbnuts know exactly who the fuck I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Dr. Jesus, I have hugged that man. I love you with all my heart. If you are ever listening to this, you're on the 7th floor of the K Clinic. Ryan McPherson, I love you. I love you. I love you. You saved my life, sir. You will
Respect.
always be the greatest human being ever in my life. Thank you. Thank
Respect.
Whew. Well,
Yeah.
we're gonna link all your stuff so that if you need to, you can reach out to Brian. I can guarantee you he is gonna get back to you.
I will.
Super
Yeah.
advocate. Thanks for stopping by again. Love having you on the show. And wow, like I said, mountains of respect for being that vulnerable and honest. We really appreciate it. We really do.
Thank you, guys. Love you.
Love you
Yeah,
too.
We'll chat soon.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely.
Okay,
Awesome, guys.
peace.
So check us out at 40belowzero.com. That's 4 letter T below zero.com. Or feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. Our email address is info@40belowzero.com. Our personal Instagram account are, for Nix, it's Nix_V713. Or for Terry, it's What's_MS. Awesome. Looking forward to hearing from you guys. We'll talk soon.